So we start our journey with the Fool. Not everyone considers this to be the first card. Some people consider it to be the 22nd. I like putting it at the beginning because it is the beginning of the adventure. This is a young character looking towards the sky with hope so high that he doesn't see that the floor is about to just disappear from under his feet. He has a small companion, a little dog, symbol of loyalty and companionship. We will see a couple more dogs throughout the deck, and I do think it references back to this little dog. A white flower representing maybe his innocence and like an innocent naivete. The fact that he's carrying his possessions means that he's about to embark on a journey, and so it's a kind of combination of like wanderlust and seeking adventure, but also not being quite aware of what's ahead of you or what you're getting yourself into. So the Magician cards is one of my favorites, and it's also one loaded with symbols. We have the figure in the middle with the infinity symbol over their head. It's a symbol of the cosmos, the infinite cosmos, the timeless cosmos. Again, another symbol. So we have the infinity symbol. Another symbol of time, timelessness, cycles is the Ouroboros around the waist. We have the four suits of the tarot: cups, coins or pentacles, swords, and wands. And I'm not super certain. I tried looking into this, but I think that this is water, fire, and air, but I was not able to confirm that. Further symbols: flowers throughout the tarot are a symbol of growth. The Magician as a card is kind of like a guide, or kind of like someone who introduces the Fool into the new world or the new endeavor they're going on to. The hand gesture, as above, so below. We'll get back into that. Yes, it's a Crowley kind of thing of the Golden Dawn, but it goes much older than that into the Hermetic teachings and the Kabbalah Young. And we'll go on to the next card now. So I probably shouldn't keep saying that every card is my favorite, but this is definitely another important card. So this is the High Priestess, and it is also loaded with symbolism. We will start with the two pillars. The B stands for Boaz, and the J stands for Joachim. Those symbols represent the two pillars in the Hebrew Tree of Life, which we will get into in other videos. It also represents the two pillars of the Seal of Solomon. On top of that, it represents duality. It represents justice and mercy. And other than the pillars, we also have this kind of horned moon diadem or crown, and the cross on her chest. These are both kind of symbols of otherworldly power, or intuitive or secret mystery power or knowledge. Another symbol of that is represented by the Torah in her hand. The Torah is considered a sacred script, or a script of mysterious secret knowledge. At her feet, you have the moon, which is a symbol of mystery, the unknown, wisdom, intuition, and also femininity. You have her dress looking like flowing water, which again is a symbol of intuition and femininity. The fruit in the background is a pomegranate, and there's a couple different ways to interpret it. The Greek, let's see if I get this right. The Greek, I think the Egyptians see it as a fruit of like the death and afterlife. It's almost like a fruit that you bring to a funeral, and the Greeks see it as godly and divine. So kind of weird interpretations, but no distinct definition. So number 3 is the Empress, and the Empress loosely represents kind of abundance and everything being provided or available to you, or the Fool, or the Querent. And some of the symbols in this: the abundance and overflowing of wheat and flowing water behind it, luscious trees of different sort of species. She has fruit. This is a card of fertility, not only fertility of breeding or the fertility of this female, but fertility of ideas coming into matter. So you have the things to make your ideas or your dreams or your adventure come into play. They're here for you. You just gotta do it. So she has 12 stars above her head, and 12 stars above the head is a repeating icon as well. It's in the Euro. It's also the Lady of the Apocalypse. It's the Virgin has sometimes 12 stars above her head. There's a bunch of different versions depending on which and where you're getting your information from. But that is significant. She also has those little philosopher laurel leaves around her head. So she has everything she needs. Everything is there, and she doesn't have to worry about it. So the Emperor is the male counterpart to the Empress card, and while the Empress has abundance and everything, and things flowing and being provided, this represents rigidity or control, or like structure, law, kind of, yeah, like control and planning. You see these rigid frame thrones, the hard rock mountains behind it, the stubborn ram head, and it's a patriarchal figure, half in armor, half kind of in regal robes. So it's foundation and stability, but also kind of control. The Hierophant is another one of my favorite cards, and so while they're not as obvious as the High Priestess's pillars, we do have two pillars on either side. We have a religious figure, but it's not specifically like this symbol can represent the papacy, but I think it's more broad in just religious guidance. We have the person, the religious figure pointing up to the sky, holding again a wand. I'm sure that this shape has a specific meaning, but I am not aware of it. But the wand being focus and power and knowledge, divinity, symbols of being special. And there's a fun thought about these figures praying in the foreground. There's an old belief that baldness was a symbol of not being I guess wise or like revered enough by God. And so uh it's interesting that the two figures looking to the Hierophant for secret knowledge is or guidance, religious guidance, is uh illustrating that old little wise tale. Little tiny details hiding up in here. We see the same roses that we have in the Magician, but we have the Freemason checkerboard sneaking through. I don't know what these X's are. I'm sure there's something, but can't tell you that much. The Lovers card is cool, and we will see echoes of it in later cards. So what we have here, some people write that the Lovers card is kind of the first point in the Fool's journey where he sees something that is greater than himself. And so if you're working with, like, I want to make these symbols basic as possible, it's the first time you fall for someone. It's the first time you open your eyes and see something wider than you were seeing. So you have two figures, both in front of trees. And these are the two trees of the Garden of Eden. We have the tree of life behind the male figure, and we have the tree of knowledge with the serpent. And so while it is like, oh, the clouds are parting and I'm seeing this thing for the first time, um, it's kind of like the first time that they get to connect to the sky and feel special and feel like there's something new to work towards. In the Chariot card, we have a few interesting icons that I like a lot. So there's a lot of cosmic stuff going on. You got stars over here. He's wearing a zodiacal belt, and if you don't know what that is, that's essentially the wheel of zodiac symbols that turns in the sky. But we'll be talking about that another time. Um, Square on his chest is a symbol for Earth. We've got the moon here. Got a star above his head. So another wand. We have two sphinxes. One has certain feminine aspects I can't quite put my finger on, and the other one does not. It's duality. It is balance. It is also pulling the chariot that this figure is on. Um, and this card kind of represents the the winding path, the progression on your path that will lead all sorts of different ways, and the decisions that you make between. So the path to do what is selfish, the path to do what is service to others. Uh, this person or you is responsible for leading these two dualistic figures to a destination. Um, so the castles in the back are also a symbol of destination, of home, of goal. Uh, you'll often see castles in the background representing either the place that the main figure has either recently left or is going back to in their triumphant return. This figure here reminds me of the Egyptian sun disk. However, this, I tried finding what this specific shape was, and I couldn't personally. So if anyone knows, feel free to comment. So with the Strength card, we have a few familiar symbols. We have the same infinity crown that the Magician wore. We have the same flowers that was in the Magician's card and some others. We have this female figure bowing down and petting what should be a ferocious beast, and she's using her mind and calm thinking to control what could be a difficult situation. And so this card can kind of represent doing that, using your mind to avoid confrontation or conflict, and having the strength to face the conflict. A great change, a great habit, great lesson learned, a great question answered. They require intellect and they require you to process through the thought in order to face whatever you're facing, even if it's a cute little lion. So I downloaded this deck online just in case you couldn't tell. So this card represents kind of withdrawing to reflect on the lessons that the adventure or the path or your situation has brought you to. He holds a wand in his hands. Let me pick a color. Let's go with purple. So he's got the wand in his hands. It's more of a walking staff, less stereotypical wand than some of the other cards. He's holding a light. The light represents the knowledge that he's gained in his path and in his journeys. The others kind of have these lively green pastures and waterfalls, and there's icy mountains, and represents to be withdrawn. And so it's not a bad card. It is about like reflecting and wisdom and that sort of thing, but also isolation and uh, going for your own kind of self progression. The Wheel of Fortune has a lot of interesting symbols within it as well. I'm going to start with the four figures in the corner. Um, so we have an eagle, a man, a bull, and a lion, all wings and all holding books. The wings are a symbol of divinity or being uh, enlightened or free, and the book is wisdom or knowledge. Another significance to these symbols is that these have these animal faces for a reason. If you look at a zodiacal calendar, the faces of the clock 1, 3, 6, and 9 are Aquarius, uh, Taurus, Leo, and lastly Scorpio. And obviously, Scorpio is not an evil. People evolved the eagle to replace the Scorpio in some of their symbolism because it was a bolder, less like negative image, and it was also more relevant in the areas that tarot was spreading to. So we have that information. We also have the wheel itself. That I do not know what the seal is, but I can tell you a lot about what's around it. So we have this turning wheel of time, and we have the Sphinx, which is a symbol of mystery and seeking knowledge and seeking truth. The sword itself is a symbol of truth. We have the serpent, which is a very important symbol in a lot of this mystery stuff. The serpent represents knowledge and gnosis and basically the growth of the individual's wisdom. And then we have the god of death, Anubis. And so as we progress through the cycle of time, oh no, I did that on the card itself. So as we follow this turning wheel, we have mystery and seeking knowledge and death into the afterworld, and unknowing and finding knowledge and death into the afterworld, and seeking and learning and finding knowledge and death in the afterworld. So it's a cycle of time, it's a cycle of life, and it's the ever-turning Wheel of Fortune. So in the Justice card, once again, we see two pillars on either side representing balance and duality. We also see a sword in one hand, which is truth and justice through action. We have in the other scales, which is justice through mercy or equality or fairness. On top of that, excuse me, we have solutions to problems. We have basically the truth coming out. So this is kind of a trial of truth or ideas or analyzing thought to see what is just. So the hanged man is not as grim as it might look. We have a figure hanging by 1 foot, and the shape of his body is making a 4. The 4 is related to minor arcana, but also related to the Emperor, which is the 4th card. It's about law and control and structure. And so how that ties in, we see the figure, and they don't look like they're in a ton of pain. They look pretty okay. And not only that, but they have this halo around. They have this halo around their head, and the halo, on top of being like divine, it also represents like a new perspective or a new level. And so it's kind of like this figure is in a position that's uncomfortable and has to hang on or take a moment to consider things and look at things from a new perspective. So the world is being turned upside down, but sometimes that's useful because it helps you figure things out and see things through. But this card represents that moment in between when you're hanging to figure out what's coming next. So here's death, and once again, we see two pillars in the back with the sun setting between them. And the symbol of that is obviously the end of time, the end of the day, the end of the cycle, the end of these lives. In the foreground, we see a king whose crown has fallen. We see a child who has stopped playing music. We've seen another child falling a faint, and a religious figure, maybe a bishop, pleading to life, or pleading for life from death. However, as many of us know, death doesn't choose or pick favorites. Unfortunately, no one is immune to death's cycle. And with that, we have this flag right here. I mentioned the Golden Dawn, Crowley, and Hermeticism earlier, but the five-pointed flower, five-petaled flower represents natural order. So it is the cycle that things should end, whether it is life or a process or a job or whatever. It is something coming to its natural end. And one more speculation on my part. In the background, it looks like we have flowing water over here, falling down into a waterfall, with more water down here in a little boat. And I think that this water flowing up and over and everywhere is representing the changing of the tides, because even over here we see the puddles growing closer to the people. So I think it is the ebb and flow of natural order, the life and death, and the inhale and the exhale. So here we have the Temperance card, and the figure is holding two glasses in which water is being flowed and transferred from one to the other, ebbing and flowing. This card kind of represents the unfolding of time, patience, and waiting to see things through. So here we also have one foot in the water and one foot on the ground. We have a path rolling behind her, which is kind of similar to the castle that I pointed out in the background recently. It symbols a journey, it symbols a progression or a process. So this is kind of like trusting the process, trusting the unfolding of time. I believe so. I believe this to be a symbol of medical or healing, and so it's kind of like allowing things to heal, allowing things to take their course. That being said, there are a few different things that these shapes could be. If you take just a square could be Earth, but Earth is also, I think, an alchemical symbol. That could be wrong. It's one of the alchemical symbols. This one is fire. However, I'm not really sure why fire within earth would be relevant in this context. Whoops, sorry again. Okay. Hey, it's the devil. So, if you remember, back when I was talking about number 6, the lovers, we had two figures, and we had a male and a female figure. One was standing in front of a tree of fire, which is the tree of life, and we had the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge. So now those are being echoed here. We look closely and we see the Freemason checkered floor, also a symbol of balance and duality and steps taken in life. We have them chained to a middle pillar with the devil sitting in the middle, and that chain is to material objects or material life, material temptation. So this card is a symbol of temptation and the bonds that it creates. We have the pentagram, which is a magical symbol, but often associated with Baphomet, um, who is often tied to material temptation and lust and sin and all that stuff. So it is not necessarily just evil or lust or just anything like that. It is being held down by your material goods and you being stuck to them, bound to them, so you can't be doing good stuff and being better to yourself and to others because you have all this stuff. The Tower is a really cool card. It represents destruction, annihilation, uh, an end of a dramatic end to something in your life. So it could be something significant like a relationship. It could be something significant like your home being taken away from you. It can be something, as long as it's a huge rattle and a huge renovation, can also be tied to annihilation and basically needing to start completely over. And so we have the bolt crashing through and the crown falling from power. So whatever was established is now being knocked down to the very base of rock. We have figures both fallen because no one's immune to it, and fire raining from the sky. So the star card kind of reminds me of the Empress for a couple reasons. We have growth everywhere, both trees and animals and water flowing. And the star can represent inner peace and clarity, kind of like restored hope, like finding a pond in a much needed naked grassland. So we have the 7 stars around her, which is really common to have 7 stars. It can represent 7 virtues or 7 seals, and then we have one big 8-pointed star within it. Yeah. So for a long time, I really had no idea why the moon card looked like this, and now I'm finally understanding it. First of all, I want to point out those 2 pillars, and we have a dog, coyote, and a lobster. The thing that these things share are acting out when the moon is full, and so here we have them along a winding path, but here they all are gathered and looking angry and upset. And not only do they look angry and upset, but this moon looks pissed. And what this card represents is knowing that there are going to be obstacles, things are going to get messed up, and you just got to kind of roll with it. And how we can kind of interpret that is that these animals act up when the moon is full, but you can't blame them or you can't stop the moon from being full. You can't stop obstacles from entering into processes. So there we have a path with some frustration right in the middle of it. I never noticed this until right now, but look at this wonky ass sunray. Look at it. It messed up. Okay. Other than that, the sun card here, we have a big joyous banner saying like, guess what? I didn't die. And so this little kid is so stoked that he got to where he is without dying. So it's happy times, it's joyous occasion, it's something coming to a conclusion without conflict or trouble. So we have the moon or the sun beaming with just a complacent face. He doesn't care too much. He doesn't like babies. So we have blossoming sunflowers and blooming new hope and inner child dancing on a pony. So it's basically just a really happy card. This card is also really cool. So we're getting towards the end, and we can tell because we're at Judgment Day. So the final trump is a biblical reference to the Revelations. It is the final trump calling the end of all time. And so this is actually pretty much straight from the Bible. We have an angel coming through the clouds, blowing the final trump, marking the end of all time. And the cross here, while it does represent divinity, it also represents an intersection. We'll get into this once we dive into Templar and religious space stuff, but the cross could be considered an intersection of that takes place in the cosmos that we'll get into later. But anyway, essentially the idea is once this horn is blown, the final judgment calls every person who's dead or alive to be taken back up and checked out, and then you get to go hang out with your dead relatives and dogs and stuff. And so the judgment card is also kind of similar. We have the angel that also showed up in the lover's card. And so if it's not, obviously it's not going to be literally like, yo, come check it out. The world's ending right now. But it's kind of like a realization, you finding a solution to your problem on your own, and a decision that changes your life. It's kind of like, whoa, it's time for this totally cool thing to start taking place. And so it's kind of the new paradigm that came with the Lover's card. So last but not least, we have the World. And again, we have these figures that I pointed out a little while ago, the man, the eagle, the lion, and the bull in the same corners that they were in earlier with the Wheel of Fortune. And this card actually does echo a lot of what the Wheel of Fortune has. We have a central figure with two wands, focus, power, knowledge, wisdom. The wreath is a symbol of ongoing life, not only because it has no beginning or end, even though there's ribbons tying it together, but also because the wreath is evergreen, and so it has a really long life. It stays evergreen. So, if we consider these to be their zodiacal representations, this is the world in the passage of time. It is the ongoing life in the world, regardless of what point of time you're in. And so it's kind of just zooming out of the whole path and the whole journey that the Fool took and looking at it in completion as something that will be ongoing forever. Ta-da! So that's the major arcana, and I will be diving into the minor arcana, but I'm glad that I went back and circled and did things to be a little bit more accurate. So I'm trying to make things better and cleaner and smarter. So thanks for watching. Bye.